ABC 9 News starts with breaking news.
Crash. This is Alert 3. Crash.
We're watching a heartbreaking scene in Washington, D.C. after a crash between a military helicopter and American Airlines flight from Wichita. We have an update on the search and recovery operation.
This is a time when we'll have to join arms together.
We're hearing from Kansas leaders as they work to get answers about what happened. We'll share the messages coming from lawmakers.
And the news of this crash is hitting the people of Wichita hard. We are live at the city's airport with the message from faith leaders to a grieving community.
Just about 12 hours after this deadly midair crash, we've learned the search for survivors has now turned into a recovery operation to find their remains. These are live pictures from the Potomac River just outside Washington, D.C., near Reagan National Airport, where more than 60 people are now presumed dead after last night's devastating crash. And we're going to have live team coverage for you throughout the morning here on First News. Thanks for joining us. I'm Cody Holyoke.
And I'm Jamie Weiss. We did just get an update from officials in D.C. We'll get to those updates in just a bit.
Katie, though, we have severe weather rolling in, and we know it's First Alert Weather Impact Day.
Yes, we don't have any strong winds or large hail. We just have heavy rain and maybe a rumble of thunder later today. No severe thunderstorms are in our forecast, but we will have light intermittent rain during the morning and early afternoon, and then it will become much heavier later tonight. Now, I want to set the stage. We are not freezing, which is the good news. It's very damp outside. The roads are wet, and there's a lot of fog, especially along and south of I-70 right now is where the thickest fog is being found. Cameron and St. Joe has just had a reduction in their visibility down to 2 miles. We had a little bit of very light rainfall in the overnight. There is some mist coming through right now in that fog, but later today you'll see the weather impact start up after 2 o'clock. That's when we'll have heavier rain. You may hear a rumble of thunder as this comes through. The primary hazards will be that lightning. There could also be some gusty wind and, of course, the limited visibility you have when it's coming down that hard. Johnny's been keeping an eye on the wet roads for you this morning. Johnny, what's the traffic update?
Well, thankfully and surprisingly, we really don't have a lot of accidents to talk about. We are working one, though, with the wet roads. Of course, it's going to be a little bit slippery, but at least it's not ice. At the end of January, we'll be thankful for that. At 7:02 here, we're seeing the backup from that accident. Westbound I-435 Ramp 2, westbound K10. This is backed up almost all the way to I-35, and it's moving a little bit through here, but we're still going to call it probably a 10 or 15-minute drive time delay through here, especially if you're continuing westbound to on K10 from 435. So at this point as well, they've been working this for a while, so we're hoping they're in the final wrap-up stages. We'll keep you posted. Not yet. Johnny Rollins, News Chopper 9, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Johnny. And as we take a look at your First Alert traffic map overall, we're not seeing a ton of issues in the Northland. In fact, it is clear the main problem going to be, like Johnny mentioned, that 435 K10 area. Reports of stalled vehicles near the triangle, but quiet aside from that.
We do want to get back to our breaking news this morning. An American Airlines flight coming from Wichita crashed into a U.S. Army helicopter near Washington, D.C.
Search and rescue crews have recovered the bodies of 27 passengers and 1 U.S. Army soldier. The American Airlines flight carrying 64 people collided with a Black Hawk helicopter while trying to land at Reagan National Airport. One man says his wife texted him from the plane not long before the crash.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Can you show us a text message that you got from her?
Landing in 20 minutes. The rest of my text did not get delivered. That's when I realized something might be up.
Well, crews have spent hours in the Potomac since overnight looking for any signs of survivors.
And again, it has now moved to a recovery operation. Amy Lou's been near the crash scene all morning. Amy, what do you see?
We've been watching crews working throughout the night in this search and rescue mission. We are standing right now in an area off the Potomac River near Reagan National Airport, and you can actually see those emergency lights dotting the water in the background here. And that is where that American Airlines plane and military Black Hawk helicopter crashed mid-air. Now, crews are using white tarps to cover what appear to be several body bags carried by boat from the Potomac to tents at a staging area nearby. We also saw more boats hauling plane parts to shore. American Airlines confirming it was one of their jets arriving from Wichita, Kansas last night, carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members. It was on its final approach to land here in D.C. when it collided with the helicopter that was conducting a training mission with 3 members on board. More than 300 responders throughout the region arriving within minutes of the crash, working quickly to get boats and divers into the water, searching for survivors in the cold and dark water and what's being described as an extremely rough condition.
It's just dangerous and hard to work in, and because there's not a lot of lights, you're out there searching every square inch of space to see if you can find anybody. Divers are doing the same thing in the water. The water is dark, it is murky, and that is a very tough condition for them to dive in.
All air traffic is being paused at Reagan National Airport until at least 11 a.m. this morning. It is, by the way, one of the busiest runways in the country. But for now, emergency responders say their priority, their focus right now is finding any survivors and supporting victims' families. A federal investigation is underway looking into how this crash happened. In Washington, I'm Amy Lowe.
And again, we just got an update within the last 15 minutes that they have called off the search for survivors, that this is now solely a recovery mission. We also got an update from the airport officials there. They will be opening at 10 o'clock our time as they try to move on as this investigation happens just less than a mile away from the airport.
Right, and we anticipate getting more information throughout the morning, so make sure you stick with us here on KMBC 9.
Closer to home, we are hearing from lawmakers in Kansas.
And Kansas Governor Laura Kelly has released a statement saying she is actively in contact with authorities. The statement goes on to say, quote, "My thoughts go out to those involved. I will be sharing more information as it becomes available." We're also hearing from Kansas Republican Senator Roger Marshall. He spoke from Reagan National Airport last night, sharing his grief.
I want the folks to back home to just know that we care, that we love them, and that this is a time when we'll have to join arms together and help each other out. We've been through things like this before, through tornadoes and floods and things, but it's really hard when you lose, probably over 60 Kansans simultaneously. And
we are learning more about the people who were on board that flight. KMBC 9's Morgan Mobley continues our team coverage. She's live in Wichita at Eisenhower Airport for us this morning. Morgan, what are you hearing?
Well, the first few flights of the day have started taking off here at Eisenhower Airport in Wichita, but it is not business as usual. You can really feel just this heaviness in the air. Really, all you can hear is just a rolling of suitcases. It is very quiet here today, very somber. As I mentioned, we are learning more about who was on board. In fact, overnight, a Russian state media outlet reported that 2 world champion figure skaters were on board this American Airlines flight out of Wichita. The U.S. Figure Skating Organization provided this statement saying, quote, "U.S. Figure Skating can confirm several members of our skating community were sadly aboard American Airlines Flight 5342, which collided with a helicopter yesterday evening in Washington, D.C. These athletes, coaches, and family members were returning home from the National Development Camp held in conjunction with the U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Wichita, Kansas. We are devastated by this unspeakable tragedy and hold the victims' families closely in our hearts. We will continue to monitor the situation and will release more information as it becomes available." A local pastor from the Chapel Hill United Methodist Church here in Wichita shares this sentiment with the grieving community.
All of us are going to know people who know people. So it's a great time to double down on caring for each other, upholding each other, holding hands maybe a little more than we used to, and continuing to pray and depend on the Lord in this time.
And as he just mentioned, a lot of us will somehow know somebody that was on board. So I do want to share with you a phone number, 800-679-8215. That's what American Airlines set up. I also want to note that this morning at 8 o'clock, that is very soon here, the city plans on giving an update and a news conference. We will be there. They also have a prayer visual scheduled for noon at the City Hall. Reporting live in Wichita, Morgan Mobley, KMBC 9 News.
And here at home, we are watching any potential impacts at KCI because of that crash. KMBC 9's Martin Augustine joins us live now at the airport. Martin.
Jamie, first thing here, operations are normal here at Kansas City International Airport. Vast majority of arrivals and departures going on time. There's not a hiccup or anything like that getting through the security checkpoint. But there is a little bit of a wrinkle on the schedule here today, and we want to show you the departure board. And you can see here that at 7:40 this morning, there's a Southwest Flight 1339 scheduled to depart for Washington, DCA. And DCA is the airport code for Reagan National. You can see that flight has been canceled, of course, with the operations going on there. However, you take a look below that, you'll see that there is also a Southwest Flight 575 scheduled to depart here at noon, also for DCA, Reagan National, and it's scheduled to be on time. We'll explain the issue right there. As we take a look to the right on the arrival board, if you're expecting somebody coming in on Southwest Flight 416 at 8:10 this morning, well, they're not coming in. That flight has been canceled again because of the work going on there at Reagan National. Now back to that noon flight on Southwest, because it's expected that Reagan National Airport will reopen at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. our time. We heard Cody talking about that just a few moments ago. Then the expectation is that flight will leave at noon. Now, if there's any hiccup in the recovery efforts there, and that airport has to be closed a little bit longer, that will almost certainly have an impact on that flight. There's one more flight to Reagan National at about 4:30 this afternoon, an American Airlines flight. It is also listed as being on time. Reporting live, Martin Augustine, KMBC 9 News.
Thank you, Martin. And you can count on KMBC 9 News for updates as crews continue to search the Potomac and investigators try to figure out how this happened, just this horrible, devastating crash. We're going to continue to bring you the latest on air and online at KMBC.com.
And as we continue to work for answers, we also want to get you started with your day. It is First Alert Weather Impact Day, and Katie's watching the timeline for more rain later.
Right. Today is a Weather Impact Day, and it really begins later this afternoon when the heavier rain moves in. It is damp outside. The roads are wet. There's fog, and so there's reason to exercise caution already. But the rain is going to be getting heavier after lunchtime today, closer to 2 o'clock. So it's the afternoon and evening where we have the weather impacts because of the limited visibility, the ponding on the roadways, all of those things that you expect when the rain is coming down. Now, you may hear a rumble of thunder, but no severe weather is expected. That rain may linger early tomorrow morning, could possibly impact the morning rush, and then Saturday, we're off to a beautiful weekend in Kansas City. The high on Saturday will be 54 degrees. The sky will be partly cloudy. It will be a little bit breezy, but very nice to be outside. Recapping, today is a Weather Impact Day for thunder showers later this afternoon.
All right, thank you, Katie. We are watching breaking news outside Washington, D.C., where a passenger flight from Wichita collided with a military helicopter.
And so far, no one has been found alive. Next, we'll hear from a man who saw the moment of impact from his home.
President Trump's attempt to freeze federal funding is causing confusion across the country. We'll look at the impact it's having on a local school district. Next.
Your station leading the way with breaking news, getting you the facts when it's happening right now. KMBC 9 News.
And welcome back. It is 7:16. Taking a look at your first alert traffic. We have thankfully avoided a lot of accidents this morning, even though road conditions aren't the best, at least not icy. We've been talking about that. Well above freezing. Don't worry about any of that stuff. But with wet roads, typically we see it slow down. Yeah, nothing affects widespread rush hours more than widespread precipitation of some sort. So not surprised it's a little slow here. Southbound I-35 coming off a Levee Road there. It's the on-ramp to southbound and across the Bond Bridge into downtown. Actually, considering the conditions, this looks pretty good. Johnny Rollins, News Chopper 9, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Johnny. So we are starting to hear from people who saw the moment of impact with that crash.
Yeah, with the American Airlines crash overnight in D.C., there was one person who talked to reporters there and said that he lives nearby, heard the crash first, and then saw it from his window.
I hear 2 bombs. It's not like any bombs I've heard before, something I've never heard before in my life. And they were like seconds apart. Immediately, I looked up the window, and there were like some smokes.
We'll be following this story all morning long. We'll bring you updates as we learn more about what happened here. Again, there's a news conference scheduled for 8 o'clock this morning. Stay with us for updates on air and online at KMBC.com.
Time right now is 7:17, and President Donald Trump's budget office has rescinded a memo freezing spending on federal loans and grants. This comes less than 2 days after it was first put into place. The White House says it's only rescinding the memo and that the president's executive orders to control federal spending will remain in effect. The White House says the freeze will not impact programs like Social Security, student loans, Medicare, or Medicaid. The local school districts are still confused about the impact of this freeze. Title I school districts in Missouri and Kansas get millions of dollars in federal aid, which helps provide free lunch to students. Despite the freeze, the Shawnee Mission School District says they'll try to operate as normal.
And the other stuff, that's just things that are happening in D.C. We're not going to worry too much about that. We'll take care of it. We'll be on top of it. We'll understand what's going on. But we're about the business of educating children, and that has to continue.
A court injunction pausing that freeze will end at 5 Monday night.
7:18, your Kansas City Chiefs are on a quest to make history. This morning, we're just 10 days away from Super Bowl 59. Chiefs will face Philadelphia Eagles, hoping to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl for the first time in league history. Today, we'll hear from the Chiefs for the last time in Kansas City before they head down to the Big Easy.
So we expect to hear from head coach Andy Reid, quarterback Patrick Mahomes, and a couple of other players later this morning. They'll be hitting the practice field after that. Tune in for our later newscast to hear what they have to say.
KMBC 9 News will be with the Chiefs in New Orleans. Our sports team has covered every Chiefs game home and away all season long. They're going to kick off our special coverage starting Sunday night. All next week, we'll be live here on First News from the Big Easy. We'll also bring you nightly specials from New Orleans with a special edition of Chasing the Championship every weekday night at 6:30, plus a full hour-long special next Friday night at 7, all next week over on KMBC 9.
And we want to check in with Katie because as excited as we are to look ahead to the Super Bowl, we got to get started with our day, and lots of rain today too.
Yeah, remember, keep your headlights on today when it's so wet. Your high beams won't do you any good in the fog. They actually make things worse, and it is very foggy. Look outside. This is a live view through our Price Chopper City View camera looking down 47th Street on the Country Club Plaza. The good news is, and we've all been mentioning this morning, is our temperatures are above freezing and will remain above freezing through this event. But the roads are wet, whether it's fog or drizzle, melting snow. It is a damp morning. We're not going to see the sun. This afternoon, we transition into our weather impacts because the rain will pick up. You might hear a rumble of thunder, but no severe weather is expected. Here again, confirming for you that everybody's temperatures are well above freezing. Visibility is limited. 10 is considered clear or good visibility, and where you see it reduced to 0 in Ottawa and Garnett, that's when it's down to less than a quarter of a mile. Clinton, also very limited visibility, so do be careful as you're commuting around this morning. We had some light showers overnight. We have some drizzle in that fog right now, but this is going to pick up quite a bit later today after lunchtime, probably even after 2 o'clock. You can see it here on Future Scan. As we approach the 6 o'clock hour, Brian and Neville will be tracking with our Doppler this rain coming up from the southwest. And you can tell it's going to be heavy rain. There may be some thunder associated with this and some gusty winds, but not expected to be over 58 miles an hour. Not a severe wind with this when it comes through. And then as it exits, we get into the back side of this low. You can see that counterclockwise rotation. So there is a chance if you have an early morning commute tomorrow. You might be driving through some rain showers as this comes through, but it would be light and on its way out and heading us into what will be a gorgeous weekend in Kansas City. 54 on Saturday. 59 degrees on Sunday. Following that, we do see our temperatures return to normal. We'll be able to hold on to 49 Monday, down to 41 Tuesday. You see the trend. And then 38 on Wednesday and 42 on Thursday. You see that we have rain in our forecast. However, it depends on the timing. If that comes through in the night, there is a possibility we could see a wintry mix with that system next week. Regarding our rain today, it starts up around 2 o'clock. It's heavy around 6 p.m. again and may linger tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, we get the sunshine back with a high of 47. We'll be right back.
Today's First Alert Weather Impact Day. Drizzle and fog this morning will give way to more widespread steady rain this afternoon and this evening. You see that drizzle and fog in our City View cam here in the plaza. It is 40 degrees, so it's too warm for any ice or snow. So this would be rainy impacts on the First Alert 12-hour forecast today. Looking ahead to this afternoon into this evening, rain is likely, even a few thunderstorms starting at 5 o'clock this evening, and then those may last overnight. Not anticipating any severe weather, but thunderstorms in late January, that's uncommon. Rain will end early Friday morning with a stronger northwest wind clearing the clouds out with sunshine Friday afternoon. High temperatures reaching into the upper 40s. So again, no risk of any ice or snow. A dry and warm spring-like weekend. Saturday and Sunday highs 50s and 60s, then turning colder next week with rain chances returning on Wednesday and Thursday.
7:26 this morning. Recovery operations are underway this morning as the sun rises over Washington, D.C. More now than 12 hours after a deadly mid-air crash. An American Airlines flight coming from Wichita collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter near Washington, D.C.
And right now, like we said, search and recovery crews are scouring the Potomac River just looking for any survivors, but none are expected.
Yeah, American Airlines flight carried 64 people, as we said, hit a Black Hawk helicopter trying to land at Reagan National Airport last night.
And a little bit closer to home, we are starting to hear from lawmakers in Kansas.
And Kansas Governor Laura Kelly put out a statement saying that she is actively in contact with authorities about what happened in D.C. She says her thoughts go out to those involved and that she would share more information as it becomes available.
You can count on KMBC 9 News for updates as crews continue to search the Potomac and investigators try to figure out what happened in this devastating crash. We'll bring you the latest on air and online at KMBC.com.
Station leading the way with breaking news, getting you the facts when it's happening right now.
A passenger jet coming from Wichita collides with a Black Hawk helicopter near Washington, D.C. We'll bring you up to speed on what we know about this devastating and deadly mid-air crash.
Both aircraft are in the water. The focus now is rescuing people.
Rescue crews braved the elements for hours in the Potomac River. The latest as rescue efforts transition into recovery efforts this morning.
In Kansas and in Wichita in particular, we're going to know people who are on this flight.
The heartbreak from this crash is being felt across the country and here at home, including in Kansas. We're going to share what we're learning about the people who are on board that flight, and just a grim morning as we start your Thursday. We do thank you for joining us. I'm Cody Holyoke.
And I'm Jamie Weiss, and coming up, we're going to have live team coverage on this major breaking news.
We do want to check in with Katie because there are thunderstorms possible in the forecast today, right?
Yeah, we're calling them thunder showers.
Okay.
You know, just to kind of to set your expectations, where it will rumble later today, but we're not expecting severe weather. We want to give you that peace of mind right off the bat. I have new information for you. Nick and I have been talking. We've decided to make the entire day a weather impact day, not just this afternoon. And the reason for that update is this fog and drizzle making it such a damp morning. Look at it. This is a live view. That's 47th Street, Country Club Plaza, low-hanging clouds, fog, and kind of a drizzle or a mist in that fog right now. It is 40 degrees. All the surfaces are wet, either from the rain overnight, the fog, or melting snow. So it'll be a sloppy commute this morning, but thankfully we are above freezing everywhere. Well, here's your 12-hour forecast. Weather impacts across the board this morning for fog and drizzle, and then we'll transition to those thunder showers this afternoon. It'll be heavier rain, so more limited visibility. Ponding on the roadways. Take it slow. Lots of time to get to your destination and space between you and the car in front of you. Johnny?
All right, yeah, that's a good idea. That wet roads, and of course, a little bit longer stopping distance for everybody, so be extra careful of that. All right, we're taking a look at 50 Highway and 470, the big interchange here where 50 Highway joins 470 westbound. That would be traffic coming around the corner to the left and headed to the left of the screen. Stalled car right shoulder well off to the right side, not a factor. And thankfully, even with the wet roads, we just don't have a lot going on right now, so a pretty normal rush hour. Johnny Rollins, News Chopper 9, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Johnny. So we do want to check in on some of our drive times this morning, just because we have been dealing with these wet roads. They could lead to some slowdowns around the metro. Here's a quick look for you. We are dealing with some drive time delays on I-35 southbound, just a couple minutes slower than normal. Same story, 435 westbound. I-70 westbound, though, is wide open.
We want to get back to our breaking news this morning. Major international headlines right in the heart of our country here. Recovery crews are in the Potomac River right now searching for the bodies of 60-plus people presumed dead after an American Airlines flight collided with a Black Hawk helicopter last night as the pilots were trying to land. The D.C. fire chief says crews have now recovered the bodies of 27 people from the jet and one soldier who was on the chopper. Again, this plane was coming from Wichita. The crash happened around 8 last night, our time.
And this crash was caught on an observation camera at the Kennedy Center. We want to warn you, this may be difficult to watch, but the FAA says the airplane was approaching the runway when that crash happened. The Army confirms that the Black Hawk helicopter was from Virginia. There were 64 people on board that American Airlines plane, 60 passengers, 4 crew members. The helicopter had 3 people on board, and people who saw this crash were just shocked.
Right now, I'm just in awe. It's kind of crazy that we experienced what happened right there. It's unfortunate what happened, and I'm praying for everybody who was involved in it. And I'm sorry for everything that happened, but it was really crazy what went down.
The NTSB is on the scene this morning. Last night, a GO team arrived in the area to investigate the crash. We're going to bring you updates from the investigation in the coming days. American Airlines CEO Robert Isom took a flight to D.C. after learning about last night's crash.
And he just spoke in a news conference just about an hour ago, saying that his teams are now coordinating with federal authorities as they work to figure out exactly what happened.
And we do know that those rescue efforts now have turned into recovery efforts.
Our focus right now is doing everything that we can to support all of those involved and also the PSA Airlines team. This is devastating. We are all hurting.
Kansas Senator Jerry Moran is in Washington, D.C. this morning. During a news conference last night, the senator said he has taken that direct flight from Wichita to D.C. before. He's also said that the crash is deeply personal for Kansans.
It is certainly true that in Kansas and in Wichita in particular, we're going to know people who are on this flight, know their family members, know somebody. So this is a very personal circumstance as well as an official response. And again, we will do everything we can to make certain that we're supportive of the rescue efforts, and we'll do everything we can to make certain that our subcommittee and Congress is engaged in what needs to take place following the outcome of this evening and this month's kind of investigation.
And we're working to learn more about that flight out of Wichita. KMBC 9's Morgan Mobley joins us live at Wichita's Eisenhower Airport. And Morgan, what are you hearing this morning?
Well, flights have resumed here at Eisenhower Airport in Wichita, but it is not business as usual. I have to describe to you, there's just a very somber heaviness to the air. It's very quiet here. In fact, so quiet, really all you hear is just the rolling of suitcases. I do want to share with you what we learned overnight as far as who may have been on board. A Russian state media outlet reported that 2 world champion figure skaters were on board this American Airlines flight out of Wichita. The U.S. Figure Skating Organization provided this statement saying, quote, U.S. Figure Skating can confirm several members of our skating community were sadly aboard American Airlines Flight 5342, which collided with a helicopter yesterday evening in Washington, D.C. These athletes, coaches, and family members were returning home from the National Development Camp held in conjunction with the U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Wichita, Kansas. We are devastated by this unspeakable tragedy and hold the victims' families closely in our heart. We will continue to monitor the situation and will release more information as it becomes available. A local pastor from the Chapel Hill United Methodist Church here in Wichita shares this sentiment with the grieving community.
All of us are going to know people who know people. So it's a great time to double down on caring for each other, upholding each other, holding hands maybe a little more than we used to, and continuing to pray and depend on the Lord in this time.
Wichita is not a small town. In fact, it's a population of almost 400,000, but I will tell you it certainly feels like one very tight-knit community here. There will be a press conference coming up very soon here at 8 o'clock where city leaders will give an update. There is also a prayer vigil happening at City Hall that'll be at noon today. Reporting live in Wichita, Morgan Mobley, KMBC 9 News.
All right, thank you, Morgan. And as we work to get those answers in Wichita, we're also watching the travel impacts here at home.
Let's continue our live team coverage with KMBC 9's Martin Augustine, who's up at KCI, keeping an eye on things there. Martin, what do you see?
Cody, we need to point out right away that all morning long operations have been pretty normal here at Kansas City International Airport. All departures and arrivals happening pretty much on time, but there's a little bit of a wrinkle as a result of what's happening in Washington, D.C. If you look at the departure board here, you can see that they're at 7:40 this morning, just a few minutes from now. There's a Southwest flight 1339 scheduled for Washington, DCA. And DCA is the code for Reagan National, and you can see with big red letters there, that flight was canceled. Can't get there because of what's happening there. Right below it, though, there is another flight to Reagan National, Washington, DCA, that'll leave at noon, a Southwest Flight 575 that says it's leaving on time. We'll explain the difference here in just a moment. And then right at the bottom of the arrival board here, there's a flight from Reagan National, Southwest Airlines 416, scheduled to arrive at 8:10 this morning. That flight was canceled, probably canceled pretty soon after that crash last night. Now back to the Southwest Flight 575. What we're hearing is that Reagan National is going to reopen at 11 o'clock local time, so that's Eastern time. That would be 10 a.m. our time. If indeed that's what happens, then that flight we can assume is going to get out of here on time. There's another flight at 4:30 this afternoon, American Airlines flight, also headed to Reagan National that right now Fly KCI says it's leaving on time. Again, dependent upon what happens there at Reagan National this morning. Reporting live at KCI, Martin Augustine, KMBC 9 News.
Martin, thank you. And you can count on KMBC 9 News for updates as crews look through the Potomac for the remains of the 60-plus people who are presumed dead. And investigators try to figure out what happened in this devastating mid-air crash. We're bringing you the latest on air and online at KMBC.com.
It is 7:40. We do want to take some time to check in with First Alert meteorologist Katie Horner because today is a First Alert Weather Impact Day and definitely seeing the impacts on the roads.
Yes, roads are wet, there's fog, and we have heavier rain yet to come. later this afternoon. So today is a wet, gray day as promised. Let me show you what you can expect through the day. This morning we've got more of a mist and fog. Roads are wet, whether it's from the light showers that move through overnight or the snow that's melting or the fog and the drizzle. It's just wet. It is going to stay wet all day, whether it's gentle drizzle or it's a downpour. You can anticipate it's just not going to be a sunny day. Now, starting after 2 o'clock this afternoon, we have a chance to see more rain showers come in, and then closer to 6 p.m., from about 6 until maybe 8 or 9 p.m., we'll have very heavy rain, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. That should exit early tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, partly cloudy, 47. And then on Saturday, a warm south wind will blow, and we'll have the temperature up to 54.
Okay, thanks for the heads up, Katie. Right now, search and recovery efforts are still underway after a commercial flight crashed into a military helicopter in D.C.
The American Airlines flight was bound for D.C. from Wichita, tried to land at Reagan National Airport when this crash happened. We'll share a timeline next.
And the largest tuberculosis outbreak in U.S. history affects 2 of our counties in Kansas. Why health officials say your risk is still low.
Your station leading the way with breaking news, getting you the facts when it's happening right now. KMBC 9 News.
And welcome back at 7:45. Taking a look at your first alert traffic accident. Looks like we have here westbound I-70, 40 Highway, Blue Ridge Boulevard area, but not causing any kind of a problem. All the activity on the left shoulder, believe me, it's there. And there you go. And right now it doesn't look like it's any kind of a problem. Maybe a little bit slow. We'll take it all the way back to Lee Summit. Back to you in the studio.
Johnny, thank you. We're watching the breaking news from Washington, D.C. now, where there's a recovery effort along the Potomac River as crews work to find the remains of more than 60 people after last night's devastating plane crash.
Right, so they've worked all through the night in frigid conditions. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio has a closer look this morning.
This morning, the search continues for any survivors after a commercial airliner collided with a helicopter midair while approaching Reagan National Airport.
This is Alert 3. Crash.
A live stream from an EarthCam web camera capturing the moment of impact. A fireball lighting up the sky. Both aircrafts then crashing into the Potomac River, making rescue efforts difficult.
The water that we're operating in is about 8 feet deep. There is wind, there is pieces of ice out there, so it's just dangerous and hard to work in.
It happened just after 8:45 last night. Authorities say the jet was inbound from Wichita, Kansas, and making its final approach to Reagan with 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board. Officials say an additional 3 Army soldiers were on the Black Hawk.
From the Department of Transportation and FAA's perspective, we are going to offer full support to those on the ground, to the mayor, but also to the NTSB, who is going to be conducting the investigation in this matter.
Ari Schulman was driving home when he looked up and saw the plane falling from the sky.
It was illuminated bright yellow underneath, and there was a spray of sparks on the underside of the plane. And I knew something was wrong because it was very, very close to the ground. It was maybe 80 or 100 feet above the ground, banked all the way to the right.
More emergency personnel rushing to the scene overnight, officials scrambling boats and divers hoping to pull any possible survivors out of the frigid water. The investigation now underway as officials try to determine what happened. American Airlines CEO responding to the tragedy overnight.
I'd like to express our deep sorrow about these events.
Now, the CEO of Reagan National Airport says they've been providing support to the families impacted. The airport is expected to stay closed until at least 11 o'clock this morning. Nicole D'Antonio, ABC News, Alexandria, Virginia.
And we do just want to give another update here that as of last check, they do not believe that there will be any survivors from this plane crash. That was the update we received at 6:40 Kansas City time, 7:40 local time from an update there. We know that 67 people total were involved in this accident. We'll bring you all the latest on air and online at KMBC.com. It is 7:47, and right now a tuberculosis outbreak in northeast Kansas is the largest recorded outbreak of its kind in U.S. history.
And yet, even with that, health experts say the risk of TB spreading is low. As of Friday, state health officials reported 60 active cases in Wyandotte County, 7 in Johnson County. Several of those patients are still recovering, but health officials say all 7 patients in Johnson County have finished treatment and are no longer infectious. So who's at risk here? Doctors say people with chronic illnesses are the most susceptible. Also, if you have chest pain or a cough that lasts for weeks, you could be infected.
Pretty wicked kind of cough that just doesn't get any better over, let's say, a 3-week period or so. But typically, they also cough up blood.
Health officials say even if you've been around someone with tuberculosis, your chances of getting sick are only about 20%. Of course, they say masking helps limit the spread.
It is 7:48, and we are counting down to Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. The two teams face off in 10 days, Sunday, February 9th, inside the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. And Super Bowl 59 is a rematch of Super Bowl 57, also known as the Kelsey Bowl, as the Chiefs' Travis Kelce faced off against his brother, Jason Kelce, who had played for the Eagles.
Yeah, not anymore, but, at the time he was there. Fans were cheering for both brothers in that game. This time around, of course, things are a little different. The Chiefs are more of the league villains than like the darlings of the NFL, probably because they keep winning and other teams, other fans don't like that. On this week's episode of the New Heights podcast, Travis says he actually welcomes that title.
At one point in time, it wasn't that. And,
you were the center. You guys were the darling of the NFL.
Yeah, I was the do you feel bad for him guys. And
you're now the heel.
I'm enjoying doing this with the guys together, the guys that we have in there, because it's like it just makes us even more of a family.
On the podcast, Jason also explains while he's rooting for the Eagles, he'll always cheer on his little brother. You just got to figure out how he's going to make that happen. KMBC 9 News will be with the Chiefs in New Orleans. Of course, our sports team has covered every Chiefs game home and away all season long. They'll kick off our special coverage starting Sunday night. All next week, we'll be live on First News from the Big Easy, and we'll bring you nightly specials live from New Orleans as well, with a special edition of Chasing the Championship every weeknight at 6:30, and then we have a full hour-long special next Friday night at 7. All next week over on KMBC 9. Go check it out.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We do need to check it with Katie, who's bringing us a little bit of sunshine on this very rainy impact day.
Oh, yeah, thank you. But it is an impact day for several reasons. This morning, the fog and the dampness, just that all the roads are wet. And then this afternoon, because we will have additional heavy rain and you might hear a rumble of thunder. Here's our day forecast. It takes you through lunchtime, where our main concern will be the fog and the drizzle. And then after 2 o'clock or so, we'll be watching and tracking heavier rain moving up. There could be a rumble of thunder in those evening thunder showers as they come up. But here you can see how foggy and damp it is. This is a live view on the Country Club Plaza. We are well above freezing. That's the most important information I can share with you. But the roads are wet and they can be slippery. They don't have to be icy to be slippery. They're just wet, mixing with the oil and grime that hasn't been washed off in a while. There's a southwest wind, not very strong at all, only 3 miles an hour. If in your community you see a 10 above your community's name, you don't have a problem with the fog. But where you see it less than 10, especially where it's 1 or 0, that's where the fog is thickest. 0 really would indicate more of a quarter mile or less of the visibility. So it is foggy in patches right now. We've had some light rain overnight, and we're going to see some mist or drizzle through the afternoon, but watch how this increases in coverage and in intensity later tonight. This is 6 p.m. We will be tracking a cluster of heavier rain with a few embedded thunderstorms inside. And by storm, we just mean you'll hear the thunder. We're not expecting damaging wind nor any hail with this, but it could get a little gusty with some of these showers as they come through later this evening. Then we turn to the wraparound precipitation. This will be a cold rain early tomorrow morning, but it doesn't last for long. It's on its way out, and we'll see some sunshine tomorrow afternoon. Here's a look at our forecast. Today, 48 degrees with weather impacts as we are tracking the rain and the fog and the mist, and then the heavier rain later tonight and the rumbles of thunder that may come through with that. Friday, just that morning rain above freezing, 47 in the afternoon. Saturday begins what should be a beautiful weekend. We are going to see temperatures up to 54 on Saturday, 59 degrees on Sunday. What's the normal high? Oh, 20 degrees cooler than that, 39. So that will be a warm weekend to be outside, followed by colder weather next week.
Search and recovery operations are taking on new energy this morning. As the sun rises over D.C., we're taking a live look at the Potomac River. It has been more than 12 hours since a deadly midair crash between an American Airlines flight carrying 64 people and a military helicopter, a Black Hawk. That happened last night. The American flight took off from Wichita, and airport officials are expected to hold a news briefing in just the next few minutes. You'll be able to watch that live over on KCWE. As for the victims, we know a skating competition was held in Wichita this past weekend. U.S. Figure Skating has confirmed that skaters, coaches, and family members were all on board that plane. 2 Russian figure skaters were also on that flight. You can count on KNBC 9 News for updates as investigators try to figure out what happened in this devastating crash. We'll continue to bring you the latest on air and online at KNBC.com. Right now, a tuberculosis outbreak in northeast Kansas is the largest recorded outbreak of its kind in U.S. history. And yet, health experts say the risk of TB spreading is low. As of Friday, state health officials reported 60 active cases in Wyandotte County, 7 in Johnson County. So who is at risk here? Doctors say people with chronic illnesses are the most susceptible. Even if you've been around someone with TB, your chances of getting sick are only around 20%. Doctors say masking can help limit the spread. Nick?
Jamie, today is an impact day. Rain is likely, even a few thunderstorms this afternoon and this evening. This morning, drizzle in areas of fog. You can see that here in our City View cam, 40 degrees with drizzle, a calm wind, not much wind this morning or through the day on our 12-hour forecast in Kansas City. Be ready for the steady, widespread rain this afternoon, beginning early this afternoon and lasting through after-school activities into your evening drive. It's during that time where a few thunderstorms are also possible, with periods of heavy rain overnight, ending early Friday morning. And then a strong northwest breeze will clear the clouds out Friday afternoon. 47 degrees. Get ready for a spring-like weekend, maybe an early spring-like weekend. Saturday and Sunday, highs in the 50s to near 60 degrees. Then it does turn colder again for next week, with chances of rain returning on Wednesday.
KNBC